Today, we are joined by Kristen de Marco, the founder and executive director at Gateway HorseWorks, in addition to being an equine specialist there. And on top of all of that, like you don't have enough to do, you also are the owner of Workhorse, a professional development company. I'm so interested to hear about all of that. But I wanted to start by asking you how you got into equine assisted services in the first place.
Well, thanks for having me on today. And it's so exciting to get the opportunity to talk with you because we share so many of, similar interests running parallel with mental health and leadership. So thank you so much. I think I had started my career in the fashion industry where I stayed for 13 years. And it wasn't until I was going through divorce and had a new baby at home and had stepped back from working full time, that I started asking myself some big questions. I joke that I had like my midlife crisis a little bit early, but just asking myself the questions of like, what do I want? What really matters to me? And I heard about horses working in mental health treatment of people. And I was kind of fascinated. I was like, what is this? What are people doing? And so I found this training and I went to it kind of on a whim, more because I needed a break from my life. And I had a really profound experience doing this work and decided to get certified in 2011. And then started a for-profit company because, again, I was coming from the fashion industry and wasn't knowledgeable about nonprofits. But yet so many of the people that were finding their way to me for innovative mental health treatment couldn't afford access to our services. So we started a nonprofit that really made the incorporation of horses for the mental health treatment of people accessible to everyone in the community.
2011 is when you were trained.
Correct.
How old was your son?
In 2011, he was 1.
Okay. So you had a 1-year-old. You were still in the fashion industry at that time?
I had stepped away when I had my son in 2010, stepped back from full work, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and then had gone back to work part-time and was doing a little work from home as well. And that's kind of when I found my way to this new modality. And I was just really following a lot of my curiosity. Horses for me had always been this place that I felt like I really belonged. And it brought so much joy and passion into my life. And yet everybody told me I could never make a living working with horses, which I joke that I like to throw back in my family's face as often as I possibly can now. I kind of went off and checked what I thought were all the right boxes. So really finding something that I was really interested in and passionate about really felt like a call to action. And that kind of aligned with this need in the community of access to innovative mental health treatment. And so I just started where I was, and it grew over time to a point where, we have so many different programs that we've developed, and Workhorse itself has grown as well, working with teams all over the US and in Europe.
The leadership side.
Yeah.
I am really curious about what it was like personally as you were transitioning. You have a 1-year-old, you're transitioning out of this field that was your place for 13 years, was your comfort zone, whether it was comfortable or not, it was what you knew, into this training, which was horses, which you knew horses, but it was this new light. What was that time like in your life?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. I think, first off, I loved working in the fashion industry, and I was good at it. I loved working with people. I worked in the wholesale side as well as the retail side, and I really enjoyed both. And it was something I was really good at. Doing things from marketing and advertising to sales to customer relations. So I really enjoyed it all. And it was really, once my life started falling apart personally and my marriage was kind of coming undone, that I was kind of doing this introspective work and this work in therapy about like, what does matter? What are my values? And it was really an intensely painful time, as you can imagine, to go through divorce, being a young mom, not having any family in the area to like physically support me with childcare and things like that. But it was also this really exciting time in my life where I was, figuring out what really mattered to me and what I was really passionate about and what I was curious about. And then kind of putting the steps in place to kind of follow that through and start building something. And I learned very quickly that I really love building things. I'm a builder, not in the physical sense of building buildings, but I love the process of creating something new. And the amount of no's that I got and the amount of hard work that followed was something that I hadn't quite accounted for. I always joke that like, I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room, but I'm always the hardest worker. And, I just put this like deep faith in myself that I could like work hard enough. And, when that would fall short, or, when people would kind of laugh my ideas out of a room, it was a really challenging times of like, what am I doing this for? What does this matter? Like, is this something that I'm just kind of imagining? And I think anybody that's starting something new and growing into a new phase in business is going to ask themselves over and over and over and over again. And you keep coming, like that will never end for me. Right. And I always say like, I've thought about quitting more times than I can count. And yet something else would happen. I would get a contract or I would, all these little kind of, breadcrumbs kept falling in front of me. And so I just kept really following it and doing the hard work and making space for the universe and for luck to take over. And I think I'm still doing that in a lot of ways. And through the process in that time in my life, I really just got to know, again, what I value, and that if you like building things and you like creating, you also have to tolerate all this uncertainty and stress and, deep questioning of yourself. And that's just all part of the process. So I feel like in my best moments when I can be aware that this is just part of the process again, I feel still really excited and very much like I did that first day in that training, 11 years ago.
I would imagine the horses have helped you through that process.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I grew up moving around a lot as a kid, and I had the privilege of access to horses. And so having them in my life always made me feel kind of deeply connected to them, but also to myself. And, there's a very empowering thing that happens when you work with 1,200-pound animals, and that you can form this deep bond with a prey animal and sit on their backs and work with them on the ground and all these different things. And so, during this whole process and change in my life, I was actually asked to rehabilitate an emotionally abused horse and a physically abused horse. And it was really a parallel process because as I was healing him, he was healing me. And, I don't know that I could have made it through that part of my life without that horse, really helping me through, helping me find my purpose and showing up every day. And, I'll always be so grateful to horses because they've always led me back to myself.
You rehabbed that horse at the beginning when Gateway HorseWorks was also in its infancy?
Gateway HorseWorks wasn't even happening yet. That was just when I was rehabilitating that horse when I was going through this mental health training that incorporated horses and getting certified and leaving my marriage, all in that, like really kind of,
right in the mix of it.
Nebulous moment. That was really when I was working with this horse.
Oh, wow. Okay. You've described a resilience. You have a resilience and this certain level of tolerance for failure. Do the failures impact you in the same way now as they did, say, back in maybe 2012?
I think that the no's are always hard. I always feel like I just want it to be simple and easy. I think
Yes.
I think all of as when you go back and you have a really clear sense of what matters to you and what you value, when you get the no's, you have to go back to that value system and say, okay, but financial security isn't something that is like really high on my values list. So, what do I value? I value being true to myself. I value following my heart, following my, the pull that I have to this work. I value creating access for other people who may not have had the same start that I had in life. So those things are really what, pull on me. And I think resilience, I don't think you're ever born with resilience. I think that it's through experience, and it's through all the no's that you kind of find out who you are. And maybe there is a way that you can find all that out without your life going up in flames. I hope that there is. But I
was actually just having a conversation with a group of people not too long ago about, like, do our lives actually have to fall apart in order for us to reemerge as more fully developed and well humans? We could not come up with the answer.
I don't know the answer to that. I think once you understand the process of what happens, and you understand that, this too shall pass, the good and the bad, that you begin to engage this process and just understand where you are in it, and you have the tools to get through it. And listen, I haven't had to experience some of the really hard things in life that a lot of people have. I think of people who have lost a child, or are experiencing homelessness, or things of that nature. Like, I haven't had to experience that depth of resilience, of emotionally carrying on, but I have the privilege of standing next to people who have, as clients, and watching that they, if given the space, they can discover their own solutions, and that they can heal themselves. And our job really is to hold space for them and facilitate the experience. And I think if we observe people in our lives, whether you do what I do and work in mental health and what you do, or you just are experiencing your family and your friends, we see that people are able to build resiliency in all different ways, from all different traumatic things that happen. And it makes me feel like exceedingly hopeful that in my darkest moments, when I feel like there's a universe of no's at me, that I too can make it through to the other side. And now I have kind of that process, like I said, that skill set within me to like really keep going.
Yeah, you can look back and say, well, I've been through and have coped with the no's for all those years, or, in all of those various situations. Now I know I can apply what I've learned to this situation that's not going great.
Yeah. And that's like the executive part of my brain on my best days. On my worst days, I feel like this is it. The sky is falling. I give up. I quit. F this,
Yeah.
And I think that's just part of the process too.
That
Like,
10 years down the line, there's still days where it's like, oh man, I don't know if I can handle this.
Totally. I mean, I think that that's just our humanness. And I think I just allow myself to have those days when they come up, and then try and do my work in therapy and do my own personal work to have skills that get me out of that place, knowing that I'll live there forever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay to feel that way for a day.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think what you're saying is the values, and being really clear on what you value and the contributions that are most important for you to provide to the world, to your community. There's enough oomph and motivation in those two factors, the values and your dream contributions, that by the next day, you're getting it back together. You're getting your mindset back together. Next day-ish, you're getting your mindset back together, so that you can follow through with those two things, what values you truly hold and what you want to contribute to the world.
Yeah. And some people do that for work, and other people do that by volunteering in their community, or they do that through parenting their kids. I don't think it has to be like, I don't think you have to just say, all right, well, I'm passionate about this, therefore I'm going to like give up everything in my life and just do that for work and build my life. Like, I don't think that there's one way to do this, right? I think that's maybe perhaps what I did, but I also see other people doing that really beautifully in ways of being a mom, or of, making sure that we have a volunteer here who's really passionate about like gardening and planting, and she, makes like salts and body scrubs, and she's really passionate about that. And I love that. I love people's own unique gifts, if you will, and how those come forward. And I think the more that we can bring that into our lives, the more connected we feel, the less isolated we are from ourselves first, but also, from other people. Because then eventually we all get to share those in different ways, with our community, with our families, with ourselves. And it's really kind of the path out, or the path through, if we're talking about resiliency.
I never could fully step into the shoes and really empathize with people that wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So it just seems like such incredibly hard work to me.
Mm-hmm.
But now with this lens that you just put out there, that people could be fulfilling their values, what they believe their contribution to the world should be through parenting.
Yeah.
I kind of have a whole new lens on how I look at people that are really passionate about being a stay-at-home parent. That is their contribution, not only to this beautiful little being, but to the community, to the
Totally.
world.
Totally. I feel that. I'm also a full-time working mom. But that's parenting, I think, is the hardest thing I've certainly ever done. And something that I mess up on a daily basis. And 90% of what I talk about in therapy is how to
Agreed.
So yeah, because really I'm just parenting myself somehow through it. But yeah, I think I see people, I have friends who are just like these incredible parents, and gosh, I admire them and take notes all along. Yeah. Because I feel like that's a deep point of growth for me.
Yeah, I mean, give me a team of, C-suite leaders any day over the week, burnt out physicians any day over the week, compared to a 2 and a 4-year-old. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's like hostage negotiations every day. That's what it is.
I guess that means we're both positioned extremely well for the leadership development roles that we have.
Yeah, totally. I think I guess, I don't know about you, but I'm like deeply curious about people and how they think, and what makes them work, and everybody just brings these really interesting gifts and viewpoints and perspectives to the world. And so I think one of the things that I do really well with people is I can just really hear them and pay attention. And I don't know about you, but like most of the time, I just really want to witness. I really want somebody to be present with me, and, to help me see things in a new way. And I feel like that's what I do through this lens of horses, and the relationships and boundaries and trust that comes up, and how that relates to our lives. And it's just seeing things in a different way, like you said. That's what we do here in the pasture, whether it's with teams of leaders or with, people that are overcoming their mental health challenges.
I know very little about horses, so bear with me. Being with the horses seems like it is just mindfulness activity or exercise after mindfulness exercise, because that presence, that curiosity that you had just mentioned, seemed like it would be very much necessary in order to work with an animal such as a horse.
Yeah, I think what we know about treating trauma is that we need to help people get re-embodied and get present within themselves before we can really do a lot of the treatment, right? And that's really challenging when trauma takes our brain offline. So being able to step into the pasture with the horses, it's really hard to be anywhere else other than right where you are, experiencing what you're seeing, what you're smelling, what you're hearing. All of a sudden, you're really in your body. And then you add in a highly trained mental health treatment team comprised of a licensed mental health practitioner and an equine specialist who are giving participants different activities to do on the ground with the horses where they become metaphors. So focusing in on these relationships, and an activity could be as simple as we'd invite you to introduce yourself to them. And a client may go out. We had a client who had their first session with us the other day and went out and would put her hand out, and the horses would move away and she would move away. And she kept doing that with each of the horses until she got to one who, when she put her hand out, didn't move away. And she got extremely emotional, and she talked about the vulnerability of being in a relationship, of being the first one to put your hand out. And we talked about how that related to her life. And so she was kind of like, wow, I didn't think I would do anything like this in 50 minutes.
That's bringing tears to my eyes right now. Like, that's beautiful. And yeah, very vulnerable.
Yeah. And so those are the sorts of things that we're doing here. And then inviting people to reflect on them, and it's a different way in to the treatment. Like, this is not a panacea. This is not a cure-all, but this does help people get really present, really embodied, and really start to work on things where they may be traditionally stuck in talk therapy.
Yeah, it sounds like incredible work. And are you treating people that are underinsured or have no insurance?
Yeah, I would say the majority of our clients come to the farm and receive our services for free. We do have clients that do pay, that have, a traditional fee-for-service client engagement, but we run a number of community-based programs that are free. So we operate a program on site at the Chester County Prison, where we bring our horses to the prison and work with men and women in reentry. So they have 6 months or less on their sentence. We work with justice-involved youth, children, youth, and family services in several counties. We work with veterans. We work with anti-human trafficking survivors. We work with people inpatient for drug and alcohol recovery. We work with families experiencing grief and bereavement. And we just launched a pilot program for middle school kids receiving emotional support at school. And so all of these different populations that I just mentioned received free treatment. And really cutting through to, I think we're talking about now more than ever, the access to innovative mental health treatment is what really needs to be invested in by our communities and our government in order to, it really change the lives of so many people. And we all felt that deeply during lockdown and the pandemic.
Yeah, we sure did. If people wanted services, do they contact you directly or your organization directly?
Yeah, right on our website, gatewayhorseworks.org, they can reach out and go on our website and fill out the contact form. We do our best to try and get back to people within 24 hours and work with them to make sure that we're a good fit so that we can then schedule them for sessions.
I really wanted to get just a little bit into what you're doing with Workhorse as well before I let you go.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about Workhorse.
So Workhorse is a company which provides equine-assisted professional development to leaders and teams across the US and in Europe. And so while teams do come to our location here in Pennsylvania, we also can take our circus on the road, and we rent different locations with teams. And, we're working with emerging leaderships. We're addressing attrition. We're developing women leaders, all different types of workshops that really, when you need to get your team off site and you really are looking to do something that is significant growth opportunity that's really out of the box. People are finding their way to us and really wanting these engaging experiences for teams that really move the needle, not just having fun. Even though we do have a lot of fun together, but really we're driving goals and change back at work that really, really help people see their work through a different lens and work together differently as a team.
It sounds like unforgettable experiences that people would have through leadership development courses or activities, just like nothing else they've probably ever done.
Yeah, probably not. It is very, very different. And it's pretty amazing to watch teams come together and bring the horses onto their team, and they get to come onto the horses team. And it really can mirror so many different dynamics about adding new team members and, thinking of, what is our goal? How do we achieve it? What are all these unknowns that we have? How do we overcome them? What are the rules, and how can we navigate within the rules and still achieve success? So all these big questions that can be really hard to navigate and learn in a classroom setting, kind of stepping into the pasture, is engaging real time. It levels the playing field, because you can't be your title in the pasture with the horses. You just have to be yourself. And that authenticity really rises to the top. So it's pretty awesome.
It sounds like I'll put a link in the description to that website as well, just in case. It sounds like an amazing opportunity for any corporation to develop their leadership and all of the aspects of communication, goal setting, inspiration, motivating, teamwork that come along with leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time to talk away from the horses, just to chat about the amazing transition, following your dream, following uncertainty based on motivation and inspiration of what you could provide for people, how you could make a difference. The story of how you began your organization is beautiful and scary. So I think a lot of people are walking those lines these days of, am I going to step off into unknown territory and follow my own inspiration? And I'm glad that they have your story to go off of.
That's nice.
What could happen?
Yeah, that's so nice of you. I think, again, I think that the uncertainty is the certainty. Like, it will be uncertain no matter what path you stay on. And whether it's a mom coming back into the workforce, or you're changing to a new position within your company, or you're thinking of moving to another job. All of that uncertainty really shakes us to our core. And it's sometimes just really helpful to remember that we're not alone in that it's not us. We're not kind of unique in that is just part of the process. And for me, that really helps to remember that, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm experiencing a lot of fear related to uncertainty, and that's really normal. So, I think I'm inspired by people who navigate it on a much higher level every day.
Yeah. And I guess through your work, you get a front row seat to that.
I do. I'm really grateful.
It's a beautiful thing.
I think you do as well.
I do. Yeah, I do. Again, thank you so much for taking the time out. This conversation was lovely.